If I was going to write to my son, I'd say, okay, let me back up. I would say, you're always going to have two voices that live inside of you. You're going to have one to say, that's risky, probably won't work, you're not smart enough, you're not big enough, you're not, you don't live in the right area. You're going to have that voice that always lives inside of us, that voice of self-doubt. And you're also going to have this voice that says, we got this, we can do it, we'll gain the capabilities, I don't care what anybody else says, I'm going to make it work, I'll fight through it. I'll just say it's okay to have those two voices.
Welcome back to the School of Greatness podcast. We've got my good friend Dean Graziosi.
It's good to be
in the
here,
house,
brother.
man. Super pumped for you.
Man, I'm so excited. When we're done, I got to hear about your trip. So we got to.
The trip was crazy. It's a new year, new decade.
Yeah.
You got a baby on the way.
I do.
You got an amazing life right now. Because because you got an amazing wife, you got an amazing baby on the way, but you're impacting so many people with the movement you guys are creating.
I know, it's pretty awesome.
Really cool. I think it's really cool when you meet someone who's had a lot of experience in life, made so many mistakes, had a lot of success, failures over 20, 30 years now of you doing
over
business,
30, yeah.
and says, you know what, I want to take this information and simplify it and teach people how I did it. I think that's it's inspiring when you meet someone who's done it.
Yeah.
And then it's more inspiring when you meet someone who's done it and then tries to help others do it.
Well, for me, and the thing is, at this phase of my life, I appreciate you saying that, brother, because it's what saved my life. Like, if I look at I've been blessed. I did well in real estate in my 20s, started with no money. That's really was my momentum. And I've written multiple New York Times bestselling books and all this stuff and failed miserably in between. But if I look back, what really saved my life was learning from other people. And at this time, how could I not want to give that back? It's what changes the world, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about it today because it's such a part of who I am and what Tony Robbins and I are doing right now. But at the end of the day, self-education is what saved all of us. This is what you give back to the world, man. I'm so proud of what you do and to expose yourself to the world and bring on other people and deliver that value to people. It's a really noble thing. I don't know about you, but I do know a little bit because we talked about it. But in high school, my guidance counselor, legit sat me down. I wasn't taking my SATs. I knew I wasn't going to college. And she looked at me and she was just like, no, you're not? Are you sure? And I said, yeah. And so it went from no college, like that was going to be perfect. And I'm not saying college is bad for everybody, but it was either, heaven's open and the sunbeams come through, right? And the angels sing. Or she's like, oh, no college. Well, maybe you could work with your dad fixing cars. She knew my dad didn't make a lot of money. Or go apply at the only factory in town for minimum wage. That was the two options she gave me, right? So how many people are there out there right now that if the regular path's not working, they think there's no other path, or go working at a gas station? And I'm not knocking if you work at a gas station. I'm just saying that's the way my supposed guidance counselor looked. And what saved me was the third option that I didn't know existed until I knew, was self-education, learning from other people. I found a couple older people in my town. I became friends with them.
Great
I saw
mentors,
that, they became mentors. And then I bought Tony Robbins' course, and then Wayne Dyer and Eckhart Tolle, and I started going down this path. And oh my God, and it changed my life. So I owe such a debt of gratitude to self-education. Yeah. So it's a pleasure to give it back. And
if you didn't have mentors, and you didn't have books or places you could learn information, where do you think you'd be?
I'd still be working on cars. Oh. That's just a true story. And here's the thing, what's cool now is why the world has changed. So I'm not a gazillion years old, but being 51 right now, if I look back when I was in my 20s and wanted to do more. So I had dyslexia.
51? You're
51.
40, man.
What's that?
You're
Yeah,
40.
thank you. I'll take that. Well, my wife makes me look young, so that's really good. But in my 20s, I knew there was more. I was going after. I was a hustler. Hands down, I was a hustler. I was running away from a broke, painful, young lifestyle. When I was young, I didn't like that lifestyle. I was running away from it. So I was working hard. Yeah. And when I wanted to find a mentor, there was no podcast. I couldn't go listen to Lewis Howes.
Right. No YouTube shows.
There was no YouTube shows. There was no Instagram. There was no Facebook. And I had dyslexia really bad, so I hated reading. There was no audiobooks. Right. So back then, it was like, if you don't find a mentor and you're not good at reading, you're screwed, right? So I was lucky enough to watch an infomercial. Everybody asked me, why'd you go in the infomercial business 20 years ago? Because I watched an infomercial. Tony Robbins took my money. He gave me information. It changed my life. I'm like, I want to do that. So that's why I went in that business. So if I wasn't lucky enough to be up late one night and watch Tony's infomercial and then go down this path of like, holy crap, there's people out there that get good at something and then they extract it and share it. Like, I cut them a check and they give me knowledge. Once I understood that you could pay for speed, game changer for life. And then I got obsessed. I mean, I'm obsessed on it. Masterminds is something I do on a regular basis. We own mastermind.com. We're teaching the world how to do masterminds and extract what they know, because it's the biggest needle mover there is.
It's funny you said that, paying for speed, because in football, the saying is, you can't teach speed.
Oh, got it.
You'll find guys that run the 4.3 and the 40, but have horrible hands, because you can teach them the other stuff. Speed is the thing you can't teach in sports. You either kind of got it, you can get to a certain point, but it's hard to really get past that, the next point.
Yeah.
But in business or in life, you can teach speed.
Yeah, it's the ultimate unfair advantage. It's like, it's this thing that lives out there, and the people that know about it are the ones that are doing better and they're going faster, and you don't know why. Right? It's like two people own a restaurant across the street from each other. One's killing it, one's not. Guaranteed, one's in masterminds, or one's learning from somebody, or one has a mentor, or one goes to a live event, or has a coach, and the other one's trying to figure out through trial and error.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at what we have as options to learn to go faster, whether that's, you want to make more money to give it all away. You want to make more of an impact. You finally want to start that business you have, or your business is doing okay, but there's that next level. Like, you see the person next door, like, they're doing it. There's a couple ways to get there. You go back to school, kind of the traditional path, and we could talk about that. It's just an antiquated system. It's not working anymore. It's not delivering what people need. It did at one point, but it hasn't evolved. And people know that. That's why there's a huge exodus from college right now.
Right.
Or we have trial and error. You figure it out on your own, and that can be the most costly, time-consuming.
Costly.
And besides time-consuming and costly, the worst thing about trial and error is everybody has a threshold where they finally get to a point and give up and go back to what they knew. Right? It's like, you're trying. I'll pay the bills over here, but I'm trying. The business is doing okay. I'm trying. It's like, it's not working. I'll go back.
And then give up.
And there's a certain point in life where people just try, and then they hit this flat spot and they coast forever. Like, they don't die till they're 100, but really at 37, they gave up and they weren't growing, right? But what most people are missing is this whole other world of self-education, right? Whatever it is you want to do. You want to learn, my wife is the #1 hairstylist in Arizona for the last 8 years. You want to learn how to do extensions and have make 10 times more than the average hairstylist. You could try to figure it out. You can go to cosmetology school and go work for somebody. You could do it trial and error, or you could spend a weekend with my wife and make several $100,000 rather than the $28,000 that's the norm. Like, just using that as an example, but it's every niche that exists in the world. If you're starting off at day one, there's somebody out there that's got 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and if you can extract what they know, decades into days, kind of Tony Robbins always says that, you get to start off where they left off.
So I'm curious, you're 51 years young now.
Yeah.
You've been through lots of different business growth, failures, successes, different things. You've had lots of money, you've lost some money, you've made more money. You are married, divorced, new marriage. You have kids from a previous marriage. You've got a kid coming in a new marriage.
Yeah.
What's the greatest lesson you've learned in the last, since you turned 50, about intimate relationships that have applied towards business relationships?
Yeah, great question. And I have especially because of our relationship, I have no problem sharing this.
I know you definitely want to talk about this.
But it's a really good question because, again, not to go back to Tony, but he's my dear friend. And when I was 48, he said to me something that no one ever asked. He said, who are you going to become in your 50s? Because everybody always talks about what you're going to accomplish. And he said that, and it kind of sticks in my head. And, who I've become that in a relationship that's related to business, empathy is probably the biggest word, compassion. And there's a time where I wasn't sure, like, I think empathy or compassion could seem like weakness, right? And what I realize now that I know this sounds crazy, but maybe to some people, not to most, especially people who listen to you, but love's the answer to everything. It really is. Like, when you love your business, when you love your employees, when you love the impact you're making on people, when you love your wife, when you love your kids, it's an easy word to throw out there. But when you truly understand it on the other side of all the craziness that we've tried to figure out what love is, it changes the game. Yeah. And listen, I'm gonna back up here. Because you threw me for a loop, and I want to give listen. If people are gonna spend time with us today, there's a million podcasts they could be listening to. They're listening to you. I want this to be one like, holy crap! I'm so glad I listened to Lewis and Dean. But I want to break down something. This might be a little different than your question, but the difference between men and women, and why I think you asked me this question, so I'm going down this road. Why I think 2020 is the start and the year of the woman entrepreneur. Of the woman's success. And this is what I learned from my wife. So it'll tie back to your question. And I say that because, and I might not be politically correct, and I'm not perfect. If I say this wrong, I apologize. But the balance between women's opportunities and men's wasn't always where it should be. Let's just face it, right? It was stacked in our favor. But I think we're getting closer. Maybe it needs a lot more evolution, but I think it's closer. We can both agree it's closer now than ever before in history, right? And I think women finally, it's not that they don't need permission. I think it's a time where women who have more empathy, just born with it, more compassion, and I think more instinct than men, right? I don't know about you, but if you're listening right now, ask your husband, or you have your wife, or your grandmother, or your mother, or your sister. Has there ever been a time you brought somebody around and your wife or girlfriend said to you, I don't think he's a good guy, don't do business.
She says this to me all the time.
And you're like, no, he's good. And what happens 6 months later? You're like, hey, babe, that guy wasn't so good. You're right. Their instinct is unbelievable. Their empathy and compassion is unbelievable, right? So, and this ties back to the guys too. But if you think about that, for those years, a lot of times that was used in relationships. It was used for their children. Now it's being used for the world. And simultaneously, we're in a place in society where we're so done with the get rich overnight, get skinny overnight, fall in love overnight, intimacy in 2 seconds, read this book. Like, we want real so bad. So I think we're at this point where the playing field is more level, and the innate abilities that women have is what the world is craving. That's why even in the program Tony and I have, it's more women than men crushing it.
Really?
We're about 57% women just destroying it, like making such an impact on the world because they tend to be more just real and genuine, where a lot of times with guys, we're aggressive. We go in, we start selling before we kind of know. We want to make a change before we really understand it. So with that said, being in a relationship where I made mistakes in the past in a relationship, my relationship ended, I'll take just as much responsibility as my ex, and I needed to grow. But when I ended that relationship, instead of thinking, I need to find a better woman, someone who, fits me, and I was lucky enough to see that I needed to become a better man.
Wow.
And I worked a lot on myself. And when I decided, and I wrote down on a piece of paper, the only relationship I would accept, I found my wife. And we're 3 years in. It's the best relationship in my life. We fall more in love every day. But you asked me that question, going through the pain of a divorce, which was mostly painful because of my kids. My ex and I knew our relationship was done years ago, but I went through a divorce in my childhood. My parents went through a bunch of divorces. So I didn't want to put that on them. But going through that pain was actually the greatest thing, because on the other side, just if you're starting a business, in a relationship, trying to lose weight, like the pain of going through it made me realize I had to become better, and I was able to attract the greatest love of my life. And then now that I look at her with this love and admiration, and I respect her so much, that when I see her empathy, when I see her instinct, I trust it on a level I never did before. Then I take those lessons, I push them back out to the world, I put them in my courses, I share it on my podcast, and all of a sudden people are like, I don't know about this new version of you, Dean, but I love it. I see it in you.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Everybody's like, this new version of you, and it's not just love. Love is amazing, but it's love and respecting what I see in her, and when I give it to the world, I see everything lift, right?
Now here's a question then.
Yeah.
So you're 4 years in the relationship?
Yeah.
Almost 6 months in the marriage, I think, roughly. 4 years in. So how do you, in business, sometimes we can get excited about an idea, and we build it up for a year or two, we're promoted like crazy, and then we're like, okay, we've done this, we're on to the next idea. Let's launch something new. Let's create this product. Let's do this. Let's get a new business plan, right? Yeah. We're off to the next thing sometimes. And that happens in relationships too. We get excited, we fall in love, there's this emotion, a year, 2, 3, okay, now I want to try something new. I'm not saying everyone, but you seem to figure out a point where like you fall in love more and more every day, or have more and more respect every day. What's the keys to deepening your relationship in a intimate relationship long-term relationship, marriage, and falling more in love with the person or the relationship that you